So in this video I review the 2023 Miami Grand Prix. I explain how Verstappen won from 9th on the grid and how the Ferraris were nowhere in the second half of the race. Hi, my name's Andy and I make videos for newcomers to Formula 1. So it was back-to-back weekends, straight over the globe from Baku straight into Miami, USA. Yeah, the Americans know how to have a party. All the celebs were out. Most of the drivers had new helmet designs. Formula 1 is basically a rich person's sport, and Miami was for the rich. There's a lot of rich people there, lots of cool hospitality things for the rich to do, and the richest people in the world were there. Elon Musk turned up, Jeff Bezos was there, Tom Cruise was there. You know, if you were famous, rich, and in the US, you're pretty much there. So Sergio Perez strolled into the paddock bouncing, basically came over from the Baku Grand Prix where he won 2 races, the sprint race and the main event. He's got this title as being a street track king, and the Miami Grand Prix was another street track. So going into the weekend, it was interesting to see 2 things. 1, if Perez could again come out on top, and 2, to see how Verstappen would react after losing in Baku. Obviously we know how these A-list drivers are, the Hamiltons, the Verstappens. Once they lose an event, they'll come out swinging. So it was interesting to see if Perez could take the hits. Right from the get-go, free practice 1, 2 and 3, Max was on top of Perez. Perez couldn't match Max's time. Even in qualifying Q1 and Q2, he couldn't match Verstappen. But obviously Q3 happened. As you know, in Q3 they usually do 2 runs, 2 time laps. Verstappen bodged his first lap, so he didn't get a time on board. And then when it came to doing the second lap, that's when Leclerc went into the wall and stopped the session. So Perez got lucky and he got pole position, and Max was down in 9th place for the start of the race. Looks like it was going to be another race where Perez took advantage of another Max Verstappen mishap on a street track. So we've kind of seen this story before, but this time it was different. This time Max won the race, and he managed to do it with a strategy that on paper was a slower strategy. Basically, when it comes to Formula 1, the strategy usually is that you start off on a softer tyre and then you move on to a harder tyre when you're at the front. The drivers at the back usually try offset that strategy by starting on a harder tyre and then moving on to the softer tyre later on in the race. Softer tyre is a quicker tyre, but usually gets worn down quicker than a harder tyre, which is the opposite, which is a slower tyre but lasts longer. The idea is for Max Verstappen's strategy was a standard strategy that people try and do when they're at the back of the grid. And that's put the hard tyre on, and then when people in front of them stop and pit, they stay out and they put in some faster laps than the people behind them, so that when they pit, they come out in front of them and gain a lot of positions that way. So on paper, Perez had the faster strategy, Max Verstappen had the slower one. But it rained overnight and track conditions changed for race day, and it made it a green track. So all the data that they had from before was slightly off and not as accurate as before. And it turned out that the first stint on the medium tyres that Perez and everyone was on had a lot of graining, and it wasn't as fast as they thought it was going to be. But what really won the race for Max Verstappen was between laps 20 and 42. And Christian Horner says these laps were most important for the race win, and these laps were Verstappen managed to keep his tyres good, and he managed to pump in consistent lap times that are even at times quicker than Perez, so that when he pitted, he only came out 2 seconds behind Perez, and he overtook him easily on the quicker tyre. Perez himself after the race even said that he wasn't on Max's level this weekend. He just couldn't touch him, and yeah, he was just in another league. Regardless of what tyre Max started on, whether it was the softs, the mediums or the hards, safe to say that Max Verstappen would have won that race. He was in a league of his own, and he proved that he is currently the best driver on the grid. Currently. Obviously, we still need to see what Lewis Hamilton can do when he has a sniff of victories again, because I get the feeling that right now he might be behind George, and George might be doing a little bit better than him. But I get the feeling that Lewis is not putting 100% effort into it, because he's so used to winning, so used to being at the front, that he can't manage to put in that 100% effort. So it'll be interesting to see from Imola, the next race when they've been upgraded, to see A, if they're back near the front, and B, when they start going for race wins, how much effort Lewis puts in and how much his game is raised when there's more at stake rather than just, you know, racing for the minor positions, when wins are at stake, when championships are at stake. Obviously, I don't think he'll be winning championships this year. That's going to Max Verstappen. We flirted with the idea of Perez might put in a fight, but this race just gone, Max did a 1-2 on Perez and made him look that he's in a different league. Like, these two drivers are in totally different leagues. Now moving on to the Ferraris, they had a really strange race. Like Leclerc was struggling to battle with a customer car. He was like overtaking the Haas and then re-overtaking the Haas, and they were battling for ages. And the Haas is a slower car. Ferrari, just by name, Ferrari, it's a Ferrari. They should be at the front. And then Sainz, in this first stint, it looked like he was faster than Alonso. Like, he was behind him, he was within the DRS range, he was hustling him, and he just couldn't get the slipstream or overtake done. So when he pitted early to get the undercut, and if you don't know, the undercut's when you come in early to do the pit stop before your rival, and then you take advantage of the fresher tyres to jump your rival when they finally pit and come out, because they'll be on slower tyre when they're on the worn out tyre staying out. So he got the undercut on Alonso, and you thought that would be it. But straight out the gate, Alonso was hustling and catching up with Sainz. And initially, I thought he was going to wear out his tyres. I thought this is too fast, too quick out the gate, so you're going to wear out your tyres. But no, it was just, Sainz was just really, really slow on the hard tyres. Unbelievably slow. And it was weird, even Sainz and Ferrari said afterwards, they couldn't understand why they're relatively quick on the mediums. And then when he went on to the softs, he did like 3 or 4 laps. And he took too much out of the tyre, and then that was it. They had no speed in that tyre for the rest of the race. Both of the drivers are saying that the Ferrari is too inconsistent and there's such a narrow window for performance. They're good over 1 lap, but when it comes to a race distance, when it comes to getting all the points, they struggle. So they've got a lot of head scratching to do, a lot of work to do, and yeah, it'll be interesting in Imola, the next race in Italy, one of their home races, with the home fans and obviously the media being all over them like they usually are in Italy. It'll be interesting to see what they do, what they bring to the table, because Imola, there's going to be upgrades galore. There's going to be upgrades on Mercedes. We're still waiting for Aston Martin to bring like a major upgrade. They've got such a lot of wind tunnel time compared to the cars in front of them. So it'll be interesting to see when they start unleashing upgrades and to see whether A, they can get closer to Red Bull, or B, they can keep that position, because obviously they're punching above their weight currently. So Ferrari and Mercedes, they're going to be bringing upgrades, and it'll be interesting to see if Aston Martin can stay there. It was interesting to see that a lot of people said the race was boring. Now, I'm not saying it was the most exciting of races, and compared to last year, it was a lot better race than last year, definitely. But I would say it was okay. It was an okay race. It was an okay race. We didn't any race where you're not 100% sure who's going to win the race until, you know, 2/3 of the way in, and you weren't 100% sure who's going to finish third. Like within the first stint, it was like, who's it going to be, Alonso or Sainz? Yeah, and there's overtaking. Like I said, Leclerc and Haas were overtaking. The Alpines were overtaking. Russell got past Sainz. Hamilton did a few overtakes and came through the grid. So I know there's no safety cars, no yellows, and that usually spices up a race. And I know it wasn't as exciting as, say, Australia was, but it's still an okay race, considering how far Red Bull are in the lead, and considering history. When back in the days when Michael Schumacher, as much as, you know, people give him credit and give him love right now, there's times in the past when it was just literally him racing no one. He had a teammate called Rubens Barrichello, and the team pretty much said he couldn't race Michael, and yeah, it was just literally a walkover. So at least there's a race at the front. At least Red Bull are fighting each other and letting them race. It's just that Max is in a different league at the moment. Max is in a different league. He's going to win a title this year. We just need to hope that Mercedes, Aston Martin can start out developing Red Bull, so that they can start catching up with Red Bull and making it more of a race at the front. At some stage, Red Bull are going to turn to next year and think about next year early, and that could be a time when they'll let the rivals catch up with them as well. So by the end of the year, it'll be really interesting to see how close the other cars are to them, because I believe that they will be closer. If you found this video interesting, feel free to subscribe. I plan to upload one video a week going forward to talk about our favourite sport, Formula 1.